Okay, welcome everyone to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something that feels incredibly relevant, maybe even, well, urgent right now. It touches on education, technology, ethics. Really, how we prepare ourselves and the next generation for the world we're building. We've been looking over some really insightful source material you shared, and it all circles around this key challenge.
Uh-huh.
How do we effectively teach ethics and critical thinking skills in an age just saturated with artificial intelligence?
That's exactly it. And the materials we reviewed, they really drive home the point that AI isn't just another tool changing how we teach, like interactive whiteboards or something. It's fundamentally reshaping what we need to teach. It's demanding a whole new set of skills from students, skills they need just to make sense of and navigate a world filled with AI-generated content, AI-driven decisions, AI everything, really.
Yeah, it's like the baseline has shifted. It's not enough anymore to just say, know how to use a word processor or search online. Now, you almost need to understand how the technology behind the screen might be influencing what you see, what you read, even what you think. It's a much deeper level of literacy required.
A much deeper level.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack that. We want to explore why the sources say this is so incredibly urgent right now. What are these core skills students now need? How can we realistically teach them? Because that sounds, well, challenging. And what are those challenges? We'll be drawing heavily on the insights from the documents we looked at.
Absolutely. And the sources kind of frame this whole conversation around a series of, let's call them critical questions, questions that educators, policymakers, parents, really all of us probably need to be asking. So maybe you can walk through those key questions together.
Sounds perfect. Let's do it. So first up, the material uses this really strong phrase it calls teaching about AI a non-negotiable educational imperative.
Right.
Non-negotiable. Why that level of urgency? Why right now? What's the big push?
Yeah, that phrase really jumped out, didn't it? Non-negotiable. And the sources are pretty clear on why they use such strong language. They argue that the old way of thinking about digital engagement, kind of passively consuming content online, that model is just broken. It's not viable anymore. There are these specific powerful forces all converging right now that make AI literacy, and especially the ethical dimension, an immediate top-tier priority. Not a nice-to-have, but a must-have.
Okay, converging forces. That sounds significant. Can you lay those out for us? What are they according to the material?
Sure. Well, the first one is probably the most obvious, the one everyone's seeing. The sheer proliferation, the explosion, really, of generative AI tools. We're talking ChatGPT, Midjourney, you name it. AI that can write surprisingly coherent essays, generate incredibly realistic images, even code. And the key thing is, these tools aren't locked away in labs anymore. They're accessible, like really accessible, just a few clicks away for students, for anyone.
Right. It's everywhere, almost overnight.
Exactly. And the material stresses that students have to learn how to use these tools responsibly, ethically, effectively.
Yeah.
The goal isn't to ban them, but to teach students to see them as, say, an assistant or a tool to augment their own thinking. Critically, not as a replacement for doing the thinking themselves. That's a crucial distinction the sources make.
Using it as a co-pilot, maybe? Not letting it just fly the plane on autopilot?
That's a great analogy. Yes,
Yeah.
precisely that. And then the second major factor, which is deeply connected, is the alarming rise of sophisticated misinformation and disinformation. AI is basically supercharging this problem. We're seeing AI-powered deepfakes that are getting harder and harder to spot, synthetic text that mimics human writing styles perfectly, and these highly targeted disinformation campaigns designed to manipulate public opinion.
Stuff that makes it genuinely difficult, even for, savvy adults, to sort fact from fiction online.
Exactly. Blurs the lines incredibly effectively. And the sources argue pretty strongly here that for any society to function well, especially a democratic one, you absolutely need an educated population equipped with the skills to critically assess this constant flood of information. You need that filter.
So those media literacy skills we've been talking about for years, they're not just important now, they're like existential.
Yeah.
And they need an AI upgrade.
They need a serious upgrade for the AI era. Okay, so the third factor the material points to is what it calls the black box nature of many AI systems. This is a bit more subtle, maybe, but really important. Students today, and certainly throughout their careers and lives, are going to interact constantly with AI systems making decisions that directly affect them.
Okay, like what kind of decisions?
Well, think about algorithms used in hiring processes, screening resumes, maybe even analyzing video interviews, or AI determining credit scores, loan application outcomes, even systems used in, say, the justice system for risk assessment. The sources highlight that because these systems often operate opaquely, it's hard to see why they made a particular decision. Students need a foundational understanding of how they actually work.
Not necessarily the complex math, but the principle of it.
Exactly. The core principles. How are they trained? What kind of data did they use? And crucially, why can they sometimes be biased? Why do they make mistakes? They don't need to be AI engineers, but they need that conceptual grasp to understand the limitations and potential pitfalls.
It's like needing to understand the basics of how a car works to be a safe driver, even if you can't rebuild the engine. You need to know about blind spots, braking distance.
That's another good analogy. It's about pulling back the curtain just enough so people aren't operating completely in the dark when interacting with these powerful, consequential systems. And then the fourth factor mentioned ties this all together, really. It's about the expanding demands of modern digital citizenship.
Okay, digital citizenship. What does that mean in this AI context?
Well, the material argues that being a safe, ethical, and effective participant in today's digital world requires a much broader skill set than just knowing how to use basic software. It includes things like understanding your digital footprint, the data trail you leave behind, navigating online privacy concerns, especially when so many services use AI for tracking and targeting, and interacting responsibly in online communities where AI might be curating content or even participating through bots.
So it's the whole package of interacting with the digital world, knowing that AI is now a major player in that world.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a more complex landscape. So yeah, you put those four together, the easy access to powerful generative tools, the very real threat of AI-driven fakes and manipulation, the often opaque nature of AI decision-making, and just the broader skills needed to be a competent digital citizen today.
It paints a pretty compelling picture of why the sources are calling this non-negotiable. It's not about the future. It's about the present they're already living in.
Precisely. The urgency comes from the fact that this is their current reality. We need to catch up educationally.
Okay, that definitely clarifies the why now. So given that urgency, let's dig into the what's. What are the core competencies, the actual skills students need to develop for this AI age? The material seems to start with foundational AI and digital literacy. What does that bucket actually contain?
Right, this is the starting point, the essential baseline the sources advocate for in a modern curriculum. It really begins with understanding the basics at an age-appropriate level, of course. What is AI, fundamentally? What's machine learning? What are these large language models, or LLMs, that everyone's talking about? The absolute core concept to get across, the sources emphasize, is actually quite simple but vital. These systems learn by identifying patterns in massive amounts of data.
So it's sophisticated pattern recognition, not like general intelligence or consciousness in the way we think of it, and demystifying it.
Exactly. Demystification is key.
Yeah.
Taking away the sci-fi magic and grounding it in the concept of pattern recognition from data, which leads directly to the next crucial piece of this foundation. Data awareness. This is huge in the source material. The idea that AI models are essentially mirrors reflecting the data they were trained on. If that data is biased, perhaps it overrepresents certain groups or contains historical prejudices, or if it's incomplete or just flawed in some way.
Then the AI's output will reflect those same biases and flaws.
Precisely. The text it generates, the images it creates, the recommendations it makes, even the decisions it arrives at will inherit the characteristics of the training data. Understanding this connection between data input and AI output is absolutely fundamental. Students need to grasp that.
That's a really powerful concept. Like, the AI doesn't know it's being biased. It's just replicating the patterns, the biases present in the data it learned from. Garbage in, biased perspective out, sort of.
Sort of, yeah. Or maybe bias in, bias out is more accurate. It highlights that data quality and representativeness are critical ethical issues in AI development. And the third key element of this foundational literacy is algorithmic awareness.
Okay, what does that involve?
This is about helping students understand that algorithms are constantly, often invisibly, shaping their digital experiences. Think about YouTube recommendations, why that video next, or how their social media feed is ordered, or the specific ads they see online. The sources stress that students need to know these aren't random occurrences. They are the result of algorithms designed usually to maximize engagement or clicks or some other metric. Understanding that these systems are actively curating their information environment is really important.
So they realize they're not just passively receiving information, but that it's being filtered and prioritized for them by code.
Exactly. And understanding that can lead to more critical consumption habits. So that foundational layer is really about what is AI at its core. pattern recognition, how data shapes it, including bias, and how algorithms curate their digital world.
Okay, that feels like a really solid, necessary starting point. Provides the context, like you said.
You need that context before you can effectively move on to the next stage, which is critically evaluating what AI actually produces.
Right. Let's talk about that. How do we teach students to critically assess the content generated by AI systems? This seems like the next absolutely vital layer of skills, building on that foundation.
Yes, the sources position this as the second crucial competency. And a primary skill here, maybe the most immediate one, is learning how to fact-check and verify AI outputs, especially dealing with what the tech world often calls hallucinations.
Hallucinations. You mean when the AI just makes stuff up that sounds really confident about it?
That's exactly it. Plausible-sounding falsehoods. LLMs are particularly prone to this, so students absolutely must be taught to treat AI-generated text, whether it's an answer to a question, an essay draft, whatever, not as definitive truth, but as a starting point. A starting point that requires verification.
The old trust but verify adage applied rigorously to AI.
Precisely. But it needs to be more than just a vague notion. Material emphasizes teaching concrete strategies. How do you actually check a specific claim an AI makes? Go find reliable sources, cross-reference information from multiple credible places, learn to spot the types of errors LLMs tend to make, like inventing sources or mashing unrelated facts together.
So active investigation skills, not just passive skepticism.
Active investigation, yes. And related to this is developing skills for approaching synthetic media. Those AI-generated images, videos, audio clips. Now, the sources acknowledge that spotting the really good fakes is becoming incredibly difficult technically. The subtle visual cues are disappearing.
So teaching pixel peeping might not be the long-term solution.
Probably not the most sustainable approach, no. The material suggests that while awareness of potential technical artifacts is useful, a more robust strategy is cultivating a kind of default, healthy skepticism towards all digital media, especially if it seems surprising or emotionally charged. And crucially, developing the habit of seeking confirmation of authenticity. Where did this image really come from? Can I find this video reported on trusted news sites, focusing on provenance and verification rather than just visual detection?
That makes a lot of sense. Shifting the focus from spot the fake to confirm the real.
Exactly. It's a more reliable long-term skill. And all of this reinforces the need for mastering source verification, which is, of course, a classic media literacy skill, but it takes on renewed urgency here. The sources really hammer this home, evaluating the credibility of any source, whether it's a website an AI links to or just general information online, understanding the difference between primary and secondary information, recognizing the hallmarks of trustworthy journalism versus opinion versus outright propaganda. These skills are paramount.
So applying those timeless critical evaluation skills to this new context of AI-generated or AI-influenced information.
Yes, it's about building that critical filter, that robust BS detector, fine-tuned for the nuances of AI-generated content. It's about rigorous scrutiny, questioning synthetic media, and doubling down on those fundamental source verification practices.
That feels like building a strong intellectual defense system for navigating this complex information landscape.
That's a good way to put it, a necessary defense system.
Okay, let's move to the third core competency identified in the material, understanding AI ethics and its broader societal implications. This seems to take us beyond just evaluating content and into the deeper so what questions for society. What does this involve?
Right. This competency is about pushing students towards deeper critical thinking about AI's role and impact in the world. It's less about the tech itself and more about its consequences. The sources outline several key areas that need to be part of the classroom conversation. One huge area is bias, fairness, and equity. We touched on bias in the data, but this is about exploring the real-world consequences.
Okay, so moving from the abstract concept of biased data to actual unfair outcomes.
Exactly. Classrooms need to be places where students can discuss concrete examples, like AI tools used in hiring that have been shown to discriminate against women or minorities because they were trained on historical data reflecting past biases, or algorithms in loan applications that might perpetuate inequalities. Even systems used in the justice system for predicting recidivism risk, these can have profound, potentially unfair impacts.
These aren't just theoretical problems. They affect real people's lives and opportunities.
Absolutely. And students need to understand how these biases creep in, often unintentionally, and what the consequences are. It fosters a critical perspective on deploying these technologies. Another really crucial area highlighted is data privacy. In an age where so many services rely on collecting vast amounts of user data to train AI or personalize experiences, students need a solid grasp of this.
What specifically about data privacy?
Understanding the value of their personal data, recognizing the extent of their digital footprint, what information are they sharing, consciously or unconsciously, and grasping the privacy implications of the everyday apps and services they use, many of which are AI-powered, knowing what trade-offs they might be making between convenience and privacy.
So they understand that their interactions online are often the fuel for these AI systems.
Precisely. They are part of the data ecosystem. The sources also emphasize the importance of discussing accountability and responsibility. This gets into some really tricky ethical territory. When an AI system causes harm, say, a self-driving car has an accident or a medical diagnostic, AI provides a faulty recommendation who is ultimately responsible.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Is it the developers who coded it, the company that deployed it, the user who relied on it, maybe the regulators?
Exactly. There often aren't easy answers. The sources suggest that engaging students in debates and discussions around these complex scenarios is vital. It helps them appreciate the legal and ethical complexities and fosters critical thinking about where responsibility should lie in an increasingly automated world.
Those are definitely challenging conversations, but absolutely essential for people who will be designing, using, or being impacted by AI in the future.
They are foundational questions for a society integrating AI. And finally, this competency area includes encouraging students to think about the future of work and the value of human skills. How is AI likely to change different industries and professions? What kinds of tasks might become automated? But importantly, what new opportunities might arise? And crucially, what uniquely human skills become even more valuable in this landscape.
Okay, so not just focusing on jobs lost, but on skills gained or skills that become premium.
Yes, the sources really emphasize highlighting skills like creativity, complex problem solving, critical thinking itself, emotional intelligence, collaboration, communication, things that AI, at least currently, doesn't replicate well. The idea is to help students see where their unique human capabilities fit into an AI-augmented future.
So this ethical and societal competency is really broad. It covers bias and fairness, privacy, accountability, and the future of human work and skills. It's about context and consequences.
It's about equipping them to be thoughtful, critical, and ethical participants in a society increasingly shaped by AI.
Now, here's something I found really fascinating in the material, this idea that AI itself can actually be used as a tool to teach these very skills. Critical thinking, ethical reasoning. It seems almost paradoxical, using the thing you're trying to critique to teach the critique.
It is a fascinating paradox, isn't it? And a really interesting point the sources make. AI isn't just the subject matter. It can actually be a powerful pedagogical tool, an assistant in helping students understand its own complexities, limitations, and ethical dimensions. One key way mentioned is through creating interactive AI sandboxes.
Okay, sandboxes. What does that look like in practice?
Well, educators could use simplified or specially designed AI models to create safe, controlled environments where students can learn through direct experimentation. For example, the sources suggest activities like having students red team an AI.
Red team, like try to break it or trick it.
Exactly. Actively try to find its biases, prod it to see where its weaknesses lie. Try to manipulate it into producing incorrect, unfair, or nonsensical outputs. This kind of hands-on exploration can provide a much more intuitive, visceral understanding of AI's limitations and potential failure modes than just reading about them.
Learning by probing the system's boundaries and finding the cracks, that sounds really engaging, actually.
It can be very engaging,
It's a
and it builds that practical, critical understanding. Another powerful approach described uses AI-powered ethical dilemma simulations. AI could be used to generate quite realistic, nuanced fictional scenarios that present complex ethical challenges involving AI.
Can you give an example from the sources?
Sure. The material mentioned possibilities like simulating the trolley problem, but for a self-driving car forcing a choice in an unavoidable accident, or presenting a scenario where an AI-driven hiring tool seems to be showing bias against certain candidates, and students have to investigate or decide how to respond.
And these AI-generated scenarios would then fuel classroom discussions and debates.
Precisely. They provide rich, dynamic, and sometimes uncomfortable material for students to grapple with those tough questions about fairness, accountability, bias, and trade-offs that we were just discussing. It makes abstract ethical principles feel much more tangible and immediate. And one more application mentioned is using AI for personalized digital literacy modules.
Okay, how would that work?
An AI tutor or platform could potentially deliver customized learning experiences on topics like data privacy, how to spot misinformation, or understanding algorithmic influence. It could adapt the explanations, examples, and difficulty level based on an individual student's age, existing knowledge, or learning base.
So using AI's ability to personalize to teach students about AI and digital literacy more effectively.
Exactly. It leverages the technology itself to build the very awareness and critical thinking skills needed to navigate that technology responsibly. It turns the challenge, in a way, into part of the solution.
That's a really clever jujitsu move, educationally speaking, using AI's strengths to teach about its weaknesses and implications.
It shows the potential, though obviously it requires careful design and implementation.
Okay, so we see the need, we see the skills, we even see how AI might help teach them. But let's be realistic. Integrating this kind of new focus, explicitly adding AI ethics and critical thinking across the curriculum, sounds like a truly massive undertaking for school systems in Canada or anywhere else. What does the source material identify as the main hurdles, the big challenges?
Oh, absolutely. The sources are very clear that this is a significant systemic challenge. It requires real effort, resources, and strategic planning. Several key hurdles are detailed. First, and perhaps most fundamentally, is the sheer task of curriculum development. Creating high-quality, up-to-date, age-appropriate learning materials and frameworks for teaching AI literacy and ethics is a major project. It's not just tweaking existing subjects, it often means designing substantial new components.
Yeah, you can't just hand teachers a pamphlet. It needs thoughtful integration.
Exactly. It requires expertise in both education and AI, and significant resources that many education systems are already stretched for. Which leads directly to maybe the most critical bottleneck identified: teacher training. The reality is, the vast majority of teachers currently in classrooms weren't trained in computer science, let alone AI ethics or advanced digital literacy. They need substantial, high-quality professional development. They need ongoing support, great resources, and the time to actually integrate this into their practice confidently.
Right. Teachers are the front line here. If they don't feel equipped or confident, it's just not going to happen effectively.
Absolutely crucial. Then there's the challenge of keeping pace with rapid change. AI isn't standing still. It's evolving incredibly quickly. Any curriculum that gets too bogged down in the specifics of, say, how ChatGPT-4 works risks becoming outdated almost as soon as it's printed. So the sources really stress that the focus needs to be on teaching the enduring principles, critical thinking, skepticism, ethical reasoning, understanding data, rather than getting fixated on the specific features of today's tools.
Teach the underlying concepts that will still be relevant even when the tools change. Makes sense.
It's the only sustainable approach. Another challenge mentioned is navigating nuance and controversy. As we discussed, talking about AI's impact inevitably touches on potentially sensitive, social, ethical, and even political issues. Things like algorithmic bias, surveillance, job displacement, the spread of propaganda. Handling these discussions productively, respectfully, and rigorously in a classroom requires skilled facilitation from teachers. They need support in managing those potentially difficult conversations.
That definitely adds another layer of complexity to the teaching role itself.
It certainly does. And finally, a point that sources emphasize repeatedly is the challenge of ensuring equitable access. This can't be allowed to become a luxury. The skills we're talking about, AI literacy, critical evaluation, ethical understanding, are rapidly becoming fundamental literacies for the 21st century, essential for opportunity, for participation. It is absolutely vital, the sources argue, that all students receive this education, regardless of the resources of their particular school, their geographic location, or their socioeconomic background.
We can't create a new divide where some kids get this critical AI education and others don't.
Exactly. That would just exacerbate existing inequalities. So, yeah, the challenges are substantial. Developing the curriculum, training legions of teachers, keeping the content relevant amidst rapid change, navigating sensitive topics, ensuring equity for all students. It's a tall order.
It definitely sounds like it. A tall order, but based on the urgency established earlier, one that education systems need to start tackling head-on if this is truly non-negotiable.
Yes, it requires a real commitment, strategic planning, and frankly, investment from policymakers and educational leaders.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. The why now, the what skills, the how to teach, including using AI itself, and the significant challenges. To kind of bring this all together as we wrap up this deep dive, the source material seems to lead us towards a kind of ultimate question. What is the fundamental goal of education in this emerging age of AI? What should we be striving for?
Yeah, the sources conclude on a really thought-provoking note about this. They suggest that looking ahead, the most profound transformation AI brings to education might not actually be about how AI tools can help teachers teach, although that's interesting too. The really crucial shift, they argue, is in how we must teach students about AI itself and its impact on their world.
So the focus shifts from AI as a teaching tool to AI as a fundamental subject that students need to understand critically.
Precisely. While the potential of AI for things like personalized learning, adaptive assessment, or accessibility support is acknowledged and important, the sheer pervasive impact of AI on information, on work, on society, on democracy itself, well, that compels us, the sources argue, to place ethical understanding and critical thinking right at the heart of the curriculum. The overarching goal becomes equipping students with the competencies we've been discussing all along. The ability to critically evaluate AI outputs, to understand bias, to navigate the complex societal and ethical implications.
And why is that framed as the ultimate mission? What's the bigger purpose?
Because, as the material strongly emphasizes, this kind of education is absolutely essential for cultivating a generation of informed, responsible, and importantly, resilient digital citizens. People who can thrive, participate meaningfully, and make good judgments in an AI-saturated world. This isn't just about individual success. The sources connect it directly to the health of democratic societies, and they make a crucial distinction. The ultimate goal isn't just about training students to use AI to, say, find answers more quickly or write essays faster.
Okay, so if it's not just about speed or efficiency in getting answers, what is the true North Star, according to this material?
The true goal, the sources compellingly suggest, is to cultivate students who learn to ask better questions.
That's interesting. Not just finding answers, but formulating the questions themselves, asking better questions of the AI systems they interact with.
Yes, of the AI systems. Asking better questions about the information they encounter, whether it's AI generated or not. Probing its source, its potential biases, its limitations, and asking better, deeper questions about the world around them, about the societal changes being driven by these technologies, about the ethical choices we face.
So it's about shifting the focus from passive information retrieval to active critical inquiry, developing that fundamental capacity for curiosity, skepticism, and ethical reasoning.
Exactly. That ability to formulate insightful questions, to challenge assumptions, to seek deeper understanding, rather than just accepting the first plausible answer that pops up that the sources propose, is the single most vital skill we can foster in students. It's what will equip them to navigate the complexities of the future, a future they will inevitably shape.
That really reframes the purpose beautifully. It's not about competing with AI on information recall, but about developing the uniquely human capacity for critical inquiry and ethical judgment to guide how we use these powerful tools. That feels like a very powerful, very necessary ultimate goal for education right now.
It places human agency and critical thought right at the center, even as technology accelerates. It's the core of what it means to be educated in an era of intelligent machines and information overload.
Wow. Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. We've really unpacked the layers of this issue, integrating AI ethics and critical evaluation into education, drawing directly from that rich source material you shared.
It definitely highlights a clear and, as the sources stress, urgent need for education systems everywhere to really lean into developing these skills. It's about preparation for the world as it is and as it's rapidly becoming.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for walking us through that. We've covered the compelling reasons why this is non-negotiable right now. We've detailed those essential skills from foundational literacy right through to ethical understanding and societal implications. We touched on the surprising ways AI itself might actually help teach these concepts, and we didn't shy away from the very real challenges involved in implementation.
The hurdles are significant, but hopefully not insurmountable.
And we ended on that really powerful, thought-provoking idea that the ultimate goal isn't just equipping students to get answers from AI, but empowering them to ask better, more critical, more insightful questions.
A truly vital capacity for navigating the complexities of the age of AI.
So perhaps the best way to leave this is to turn that final thought back to you, our listeners, thinking about AI, information, and the world around you. What questions will you start asking? Thank you for joining us here on The Deep Dive. If you found this exploration valuable and want to keep digging into the crucial topics shaping our technological world, please do subscribe to our channel, Tech AI and Beyond. We look forward to exploring more with you next time.